Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Delphi Economic Forum. Today we have the pleasure to have a discussion with Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, the leader of the democratic Belarus, the leader of the opposition in Belarus. Welcome to Athens, Ms. Tsikhanouskaya.
Thank you.
Let me start with a question, more general question about your background. Many in our audience, including many of our Greek attendants, are not very familiar with the politics of Belarus. So, will you tell us about yourself? How did a 27-year-old former English teacher and interpreter with no previous political experience got involved in politics in Belarus? How did the regime in Belarus allow you to run in the elections? And how did you manage through your candidacy to create problems in one of the strongest authoritarian regimes in Europe?
For 26 years, our country lives under dictatorship. And there is always a sense of fear among Belarusians. But a lot of happened last 2 years, I suppose. New generation grew up, new generation that understand that we want to develop our country. We don't want to live in this stability anymore. But as for me, I also was never involved in politics. I used to think, as all Belarusians, I can't change anything. The dictator is, he's ruler. He will not allow us to, to say our word. But it was my husband who wanted to change everything. But before elections, he was jailed. And my first step was only for love to my husband. I wanted to show my support to him. And I don't know, accidentally, because regime underestimated me and Belarusian people, they allowed me to participate, in these elections. And everything has happened. I got huge support of Belarusian people, and I won this election, but the election was stolen.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell us a bit more about what happened after the elections? What was the reaction of the government of Belarus?
After the declaration of the results, fraudulent results, people went to the streets to show that we are against fraudulent elections. And this demonstration was absolutely peaceful. We didn't want any kind of violence from our side, from side of population. But regime made 3 days of hell on the Belarusian land. Thousands of people have been detained, brutally detained. They were beaten and tortured in the jails. And the whole world was astonished with those pictures of blue and black people, because of bruises. And after this, people started to go out for demonstrations, not only against fraudulent elections, but also against violence, against tortures in our country. And since then, our resistance is continuing, and regime is responding only with violence. They are using this leverage of tortures or of humiliation to calm down people, to silence people. But people are not giving up. People continue to resist under these difficult circumstances. They have to be creative in fighting this regime, but they will not stop.
Mm-hmm. Tell us more about the state of the Belarusian opposition. You and other leaders of the opposition are in exile. You live in Lithuania, if I'm not mistaken. How do you communicate with the popular base back in Belarus? How do you organize your opposition to the Lukashenko regime back home? And what are maybe the strategy or the next steps for the democratic opposition of Belarus in the coming period?
So first of all, a lot of political leaders are in jail. Some of them are in exile. And of course, it's rather difficult to conduct this revolution. But the peculiarity of our situation is that we don't have to lead this revolution, because this revolution is led by people themselves. This is like grassroots revolution. And we are communicating via Zoom conferences, by phone, and we in constant dialogue. We have to know what's going on the ground, and people need to talk to me and other political leaders to explain them. And we inspire each other. We support each other. And people give me this mandate to present them on international arena, and I do everything I can to support people from this side. People who are on the ground, they are fighting secretly, undergroundly in Belarus. So everybody is important in this fight. So we in constant dialogue, and we support each other, and solidarity is our strength in this case.
Mm-hmm. Will you do anything different in the coming period in terms of opposition to the regime as democratic forces of Belarus? Do you plan to change your strategy?
Since the beginning of my election campaign, we have only one aim: new elections. I have a very simple program for my presidency. I have mandate only to organize new elections. And now our strategy is put as much pressure on the regime for them to force negotiate with civil society and to bring our country to new elections through negotiations.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about the reaction or the support that the democratic opposition in Belarus is getting from the US and the EU. Now, in response to the crackdown on democratic protests in Belarus, the US and the EU responded with sanctions. Mm-hmm. Tell me if you think sanctions is an effective tool against the authoritarian regime in Belarus. And if you could tell us a bit more about what would you expect from the EU to do more to support the democratic forces of Belarus?
So first of all, after this crackdown of demonstrations in Belarus, we're really grateful to the countries that didn't recognize Lukashenko as legitimate president. And countries, democratic countries, have to be consistent in their policy. And 2 packages of sanctions were imposed, and the list is not very long, but it's a clear signal that we are supporting Belarusian civil society, that we are supporting our fight for democracy, for democratic changes. And of course, smart and targeted sanctions are useful. It's not like punishment for the regime. It's like preventing from escalation of violence in our country. Even threat of sanctions can help to release political prisoners in Belarus. And at the moment, more than 3,000 criminal cases have been started against people, and 370 political prisoners in the country. So, and sanctions, yes, they are effective, even if, some countries say the sanctions may harm people, but people are already suffering. People are suffering. People are afraid to leave, get out to the streets. People are afraid to live in their apartments. People are suffering in jails. And sanctions is, the most powerful leverage to put pressure on the regime. And at the moment, European Union and the USA and other democratic countries can help, basing on 3 pillars. First of all, it's pressure on the regime, political isolation, economical isolation. Second is assistance and solidarity, support civil society. Everybody under pressure in Belarus, journalists, students, workers, medics, everyone. So, and everybody needs this support from democratic countries. And the third pillar is justice. So as we want to avoid impunity, we are collecting these evidences of crimes in Belarus and give them to international community for them to save them. For everybody who is responsible for crimes will be brought to a justful court trial in the future.
In case there are negotiations to resolve the crisis in Belarus, In your opinion, who should participate on the part of political actors of Belarus in these negotiations? And could there be a role, maybe mediating role for the EU in the process of negotiations between the regime and the opposition?
We are looking for any opportunity for negotiations. And this can be, I don't know, OSCE, Germany as a country, or France, or the USA, or Russia, I don't know. It may be NGO or personality who will help us to organize these negotiations. So we have to look for opportunities.
Let me turn back to the question of the international support for democratic Belarus and the democratic mobilization of Belarusian citizens, and of course the opposition like yourself. The European Union is a big organization with many member states all over Europe. And I imagine that your movement gets a lot of support and understanding from countries like the Baltic states, for example, that used to be in the same country like Belarus 30 years ago, or maybe in Central Europe, places like Poland. However, the situation is not familiar and we really don't know much, and it's not easy to explain to ordinary citizens why we should care, quote unquote, in a country like Greece or maybe in Spain or in Portugal, in countries that are really far away from Belarus. Can you give us your view why an ordinary Greek or a Spaniard or an Italian or a Portuguese should care about what's happening in Belarus? Why we should be following what's happening in Belarus and support the democratic opposition?
What is going now in Belarus, it's not challenge only for Belarusians. Of course, this is our responsibility, and we have to solve this problem like ourselves. We can, but there will be a lot of victims in this fight. But democratic countries, it's the challenge also for democratic countries, for them to prove that the values of democracy, freedom of speech, rule of law, are not just empty words. It's the values that you are ready to stand for. And that's why you have to support people who are on their way looking for democracy. Just support not only on the words, but with your actions and statements and deals.
In this country, you also had a dictatorship last time in late 1960s and early 1970s. So we have a democratic system since the mid-1970s. So, during the period of dictatorship in Greece, there were a lot of Greeks abroad in exile, and they received a lot of support by Western European countries in their effort to bring democracy back to Greece. So I think a lot of Greece will understand that fighting for human rights, fighting for democracy in any country of the world, let alone in a European country, will be a very important cause and something to support. I would like to thank you. Maybe you have a few closing remarks for us before we close.
Just before the forum, I went to the monument of killed students that were killed in the 70s. Today, the first trial against students is started in Belarus. Students are usually the people who are leading protests because they are new generation. They want something new. They want development. So I really want to ask all the countries to support Belarus on this difficult period. And I ask you to act united, because when we are united, we are strong. And we have a lot of support and the words of solidarity from different countries, but we still haven't had an event that would unite all the leaders. So that's why we now looking for opportunity to organize a high-level conference where leaders and experts, high-level leaders and experts can participate to discuss how can you help Belarus to solve political crisis, political and humanitarian. So I call on for all countries to stand with Belarus, help us, because Belarus really can be a happy case. Thank you.
Ms. Tsikhanouskaya, thank you very much and good luck with your struggle. And
thank you.
We hope to see you again in Athens.